Hey everybody, this is Dream, and today we're going to be covering the NBA and college basketball today. Before I get started, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? It really does help the channel a lot. I really do appreciate it. So we're going to do NBA first today. We have a 7-game slate. We have an absolutely metric ton of injuries to go through on this slate. Uh, Overall, I do think this slate is actually going to be pretty good, though it's going to be hard to figure out early on in the day until we get information on all the questionable tags. So let's go and get in the injury report here. For the Cavs, Mobley is out. For the Celtics, Brown is questionable. For the Bulls, Caruso is questionable, and Levine is out. For the Heat, Lowry, Butler, Love, Richardson, and Highsmith are all questionable. And Bam and Hero are still out. For the Timberwolves, Edwards and McDaniels are questionable. For the Mavericks, Kyrie, Green, Cleaver are all out, and Curry and Jones are questionable. For the Nets, Simmons, Walker, and Smith Jr. are all out. For the Nuggets, Caldwell Pope is out. For the Jazz, Collins is questionable. Markkanen is doubtful, and Clarkson and George are out. For the Trailblazers, Brogdon is questionable. Ayton is questionable. Grant is out, and Williams is out. The Thunder is at full strength. That's the only team that doesn't have injuries today. For the Kings, Lyles is questionable and Lynn is out. For the Warriors, Draymond Green is suspended indefinitely. For the Clippers, Paul George is questionable. But we do have some plays. I have a couple core plays here, both being Simmons and Sexton here. I'll talk about them first. So Simmons has played very well in his few games back since he's missed all but the first game of the season. He came back and he's had 3 straight games over 37 fantasy points. I look for that to continue in this matchup. Utah doesn't defend very well this season, especially with all the guys out. I think he's going to have a high power game here. He's going to play a lot of minutes, and especially if his usage will even go up higher if guys are missing. Do keep in mind that he does tend to be somewhat scoring dependent, and if you look at his numbers, he's had a total of 4 assists in 3 of the 4 games he's played. And so he has to score a decent chunk of points, but he's definitely capable of that in this matchup. This should be a relatively high scoring game, so I do like his upside in this one. Then we're going to look at Mr. Sexton for Utah. Now, he was pushed in the starting lineup last game, and he had a nice monster game. He's just underpriced for this potential. And a few games where he's played a lot of minutes this season, he's been very well. And I expect him to have a good game here against Portland, who doesn't aren't going to play too much defense either. Last time he played Portland earlier this year, he played 36 fantasy points as well, and he's had a few good games against them when he gets a ton of minutes. The minutes are obviously the issue with him throughout the season, but with Clarkson and George both out, he's going to have a lot of upside in this matchup. So let's go ahead and get into the rest of the plays I like here. We'll start with Joker. The only thing that can stop him from dominating daily fantasy sports are the refs. That said, the refs have done so in 2 of the past 11 games, so I don't expect them to do it in this one against Brooklyn. He should be back to scoring over 60 fantasy points, and obviously his price point has reflected that situation, but he's definitely capable of a big game here. Looking at Luka Doncic, he is a good contrarian play off of Joker. He's been absolutely dominating the ball. His usage has gone through the roof. He's been over 40 minutes in a bunch of games now. And I look for that to continue here. He has some nice upside in this matchup with Minnesota, and he really should be able to dominate them as well. He's been good all season long, and he really has nothing. Being a home game, he should have even more upside than he typically has. So he's a great option and a contrarian play from Joker. And if you want to go super contrarian, you can go to Shea Alexander, who's been one of the steadiest expensive guys lately. He's been very consistent. I like his potential here. He's been over 50 fantasy points in every game since the 19th of November, so he has been absolutely dominating for a while, and he's got a great matchup here against the Kings, who should try to run the ball more. He scored 56 fantasy points against them last time he played them, and he did that without even very odd stats when it comes to rebounds and assists, so I look for him to have an absolutely dominating game here. He's been the only player on the Thunder that have just been great all season. Chet Holmgren has been pretty good, but it does help, SGA, generally speaking, in a game like this. He's going to have a lot of run and gun type of situations, so he should be good to go in this one. Then we'll look at Sabonis for the Kings. Now, he has come down in price some because he hasn't had as many dominating games lately, but he still has that upside, and his price is cheap enough now that he's definitely worth a look in this matchup, especially since this is going to be a faster paced game. I do like his potential in this one. He also had 60 fantasy points against Oklahoma City last time he played them. I expect a similar type of game, and his price being cheaper definitely helps roster him a little bit easier. Then we'll look at Kelly Olynyk. Now, he definitely draws some potential today, especially if Collins gets ruled out. Uh, and Markkanen as well. Obviously, he would get more minutes as a result. Last game, he had 32 fantasy points. I look for a similar type of matchup potential here against Portland if those guys are out for them. And same goes if some guys for Trailblazers are ruled out as well, like Aiton. Then we'll look at Talon Horton Tucker, who has played inconsistent throughout the season. His minutes should be up today as a result of all the injuries to the Jazz, and if that's the case, then I like his potential in this one. He has a pretty good ceiling, though he does have a lower floor than most, as he can go cold from the field and stuff. But he's definitely in play on the slate, especially with his price being pretty nice and helps you pay up at other positions. Obviously, there's a bunch of other guys that could open up once we get information about the Heat and the Bulls and also the Mavericks and Jazz and Trailblazers. So lots to figure out there. But overall, it's a pretty interesting slate. It should be a high scoring one despite that because it seems like there's a lot of good value priced options, unlike yesterday where it seemed like there was none. So let's look at college basketball now. Um, this slate is kind of crazy. It's just 4 games, and 3 of the games look like blowouts. Florida against ECU, Wisconsin against Jacksonville State, and Marquette versus St. Thomas all look like blowouts. Then we have the Tulane Furman game, which has a 7 point spread in Tulane's favor. And if we look at the totals for these 4 games, Tulane has a total of 172, while the second best one is Florida at 151, Marquette 140, and Wisconsin 125. So this Tulane Furman game is going to have a lot of options in it, and we do have some good options here. Kevin Cross is definitely my favorite play on the slate by a stretch, and so is Alex Williams. But those 2 guys definitely have a ton of upside in this matchup due to their price points. Pegas for Furman and Holloway also very good upside. However, Holloway does carry some risk here for Tulane, but I do think he's a good play just because of the totals and everything else. And then Hanglotten for Florida, he has some nice upside as he's back in the starting lineup now, and he should be able to dominate this game. And I don't expect it to be too out of hand where he doesn't get a ton of minutes, and so he's definitely worth. He should get about 20 minutes, and he should be able to pay off in that from the price point he is. For the rest of the places, there's really not a lot of great options. So I would suggest either going with some more Furman and Tulane players, or look at Marquette or Wisconsin for some guys. There's also a couple of options on Florida like Clayton and Poland and Richard who have some utility today, but they're all high risk. So there's a lot of risky plays on the slate, but I do think this is a good starting point to make kind of a core set of a lineup, and then just find 2 guards and a utility spot guy that you can stomach. But everybody outside these 5 guys are super high risk, so do keep that in mind. So that's what I have for college basketball. Overall, we've been dominating college basketball so far this season. The last couple of days, I didn't really play much because the slates were pretty awful, and I think that's probably similar today. But this is a pretty good spot to start at least, so I do think it's okay. I will be playing a little bit more today than I have been. We've been hitting bets every day, though I didn't see any bets in college basketball I like today, so that's kind of a downer. But overall, we got a good slate here. As for NBA, we've been doing pretty good the last week or two. The injury situations across the board are just absolutely crazy. Like yesterday, LeBron didn't play, and then Davis did play, so that definitely changed things up. But overall, the NBA is running pretty good right now, and even with all the injuries, we're still able to make good lineups throughout the day. Make sure to, use the information here and then kind of, check the injury news and then make adjustments as a result of that. But don't get too, trust your gut when it comes to the plays. Like I'm gonna have Simmons and Sexton in no matter what today. And I'm gonna have to pick between Joker, Luca, and SGA for a third guy, and the rest of the injury news doesn't really matter from that point. So, but we've been doing pretty good in NBA. Obviously, we could probably do a little bit better, but the injury news really makes it difficult because a lot of the injuries for the late games don't come out until after the slate's already started, and sometimes you get stuck without guys, especially with the situations where like you have Edwards and questionable, and then you have guys for the Jazz and Trailblazers questionable. Definitely makes it hard. So overall, though, I think it's a pretty good slate for both sports. So I think it's a good one to play today. So if you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. And have a nice day, guys.